Guys, I hope you're doing fantastic. I wanted to add a little something something to the end of November. The last 2 weeks, we're going to be dealing with this little configuration that I wanted to do a separate video on. It's Kronos is going to be retrograde, Hades is going to be retrograde, and Jupiter is going to be retrograde, all sitting nice and tight together in the sign of Cancer. Well, it's quincunxing or 5 houses away from Mars and Black Moon Lilith, which are going to be conjunct. And that Lilith is going to be retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius. So I'm going to break this out for each rising sign to discuss what this is going to mean for you, just on top of everything that I delivered already for the month of November. Okay, as it is going to be a little bit of a different type of push-pull. So I wanted to speak pretty specifically. So with all that being said, let's get right into the messages and let's start with our Aries rising friends. Okay, Aries rising. So that Cancer energy, so we have Kronos, Hades, and Jupiter retrograde, all in Cancer, all in your fourth house. And this is creating a very deep karmic kind of excavation, right? It's the deepest house of your chart. And it's excavating this kind of this emotional and this ancestral foundation that you have in that fourth house energy. The fourth house is very connected to your emotional security, very connected to your roots, your home life, and just that inner sanctuary, right, that we have. Cancer certainly also does amplify sensitivity and nostalgia and protection, protection instincts. This need to protect oneself, this need to protect one's family even. Now that retrograde energy internalizes and personalizes these processes that we're going to be talking about. So you're not just experiencing family dynamics here, you're reworking them on a soul level. What does family mean? What is it supposed to look like, right? Now I'll just do a quick breakdown of what these guys are, right? Because not everybody knows about the asteroid. So Kronos retrograde, first of all, very connected to divine authority, very connected to mastery and order. So you want to expect, because it's retrograde, you're going to be reviewing how authority and structure were modeled early in your life, questioning who holds power within the family or within your internal psyche, or even the internal psyche of the family. Just really looking at this idea of control, right? Remember, Kronos is Saturn's dad, right? And then we have Hades retrograde. Hades very connected to purification, but he's also very connected to decay and transformation of what's hidden and the need to transform that which is sort of poking at us silently, but we know needs to change. So what's going to happen here with this retrograde is an unearthing of old emotional toxins, ancestral secrets, buried grief. It's a very necessary catharsis that you're going to be feeling, especially with that Jupiter energy in the house. And now that Jupiter is retrograde as of this month, Jupiter is very connected to expansion. So these ideas, this Kronos energy and Hades energy, they're going to be expanded, right? Really kind of exaggerated, in fact. However, with Jupiter retrograde, it's going to be very internalized. But Jupiter is about wisdom and ethics and expansion and growth and everything that's fortuitous, right? So when Jupiter goes retrograde, especially in this space, this internal moral and philosophical reassessment is going to be going on. You're going to be turning inward to find meaning in the family story and whatever that means to you, the family cycles and whatever that means to you. So altogether, this trio in that fourth house really does suggest a profound internal restructuring that's going to be going on of your personal integrity and your belief systems. And it's all very rooted in your emotional history. Now, we have a quincunxing to Mars and Black Moon Lilith, which she is retrograde in Sag in your ninth house. So that quincunx is a 150-degree aspect. This creates friction that demands adjustments. We can't ignore and poo-poo it like we can do sometimes to like squares, right? There's got demand adjustment with a clear resolution when we're talking about a quincunx. So Mars and Lilith in Sag represent a very fiery drive towards autonomy, truth, liberation from social or any kind of ideological constraint, especially with that retrograde energy that she's going to be retrograde, because it becomes more of a rebellion turned inward, a re-examining of how anger and instinct and authenticity are expressed in relation to your belief system. So there's this very dynamic energy, right? But it challenges that Cancerian need for safety and belonging, right? Again, that fourth house cluster wants that emotional containment and continue and being able to continue in a space where you feel safe and secure. But that ninth house energy with Mars and Lilith wants freedom and truth and self-definition, no matter the cost, no matter the fallout. So obviously, this is going to create a tension between loyalty to your origins and the urge to break free from that which has been inherited, whether it's your beliefs or your moral compass, whatever it is, right? This is going to be very front and center. So pulling these together, what can end up happening, right, as an integrated expression is emotional and philosophical maturity, transforming inherited emotional patterns into something a lot more wise and a lot healthier for your life. It's also going to bring about a type of liberation from unconscious family, any sort of familial types of conditioning that you may still hold on to. And you're going to be able to lean into the courage to express a new worldview that's grounded, is a lot more grounded in emotional authenticity and not being reactive, right? Being a lot more responsive. Now, if you fight this reality, it may feel like suddenly you feel overwhelmed with guilt or defensiveness around challenging family or cultural expectations that are going on. Could be dealing with an inner conflict between safety and freedom. Repressed anger can surface as some sort of moral or ideological crisis that you're experiencing. So, this transit is certainly this karmic kind of initiation. As we end the month of November and go into December, it's going to be compelling you to confront the emotional past, which is that Cancer fourth house energy, so that you can expand into a more liberated philosophy of self, which is that Sag ninth house energy. And for a lot of you, this could even be playing on like your politics, your positioning when it comes to the faith that you practice. This could also be creating some tension with father energy in your life. But the goal here is it's about integration, right? Turning inherited or old emotional complexities into conscious wisdom and spiritual independence. So that is how it's going to end up manifesting for you guys. I hope this was helpful as an extra addition to my monthly forecast for the month of November. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye, Aries. Hey Taurus, so we have Kronos, we have Hades, we have Jupiter, all retrograde in Cancer in the third house. So the focus there turns to the emotional and karmic underpinnings of your thoughts, your language, your communication patterns, circumstances going on with siblings, extended family members, people in your neighborhood, how it is that you're approaching the whole idea of learning. Now, Cancer adds sensitivity and intuition, right? It's a very beautiful water energy. And the retrograde makes us deeply, deeply introspective. So you can very easily, in this third house area, everything that I just mentioned, be reevaluating how you think, speak, process emotional information, particularly inherited communication styles or family narratives that shape how it is that you ultimately interpret reality. So when we're talking about this Kronos retrograde, this is going to manifest for you in a way where you're going to be reassessing the authority or integrity behind your words and thoughts, learning to speak from your emotional truth instead of conditioning, and being able to sense the difference there. We have Hades retrograde, purging toxic or suppressed mental patterns, perhaps linked to old emotional wounds, or even for many of you, unspoken and challenging family dynamics. And then we have Jupiter retrograde in there. Remember, Jupiter expands whatever it's hanging out with, and these are within that 10-degree orb, really all year, okay? But now Jupiter's retrograde this month. That's why I wanted to address this here. So with the Jupiter retrograde, internalizing wisdom, questioning the beliefs that shape how you perceive and convey the truth. I'm really getting very honest about everything that's third house related. So together, this does suggest to me mental and emotional purification. a real dismantling of inherited thought patterns so that you can reclaim your authentic voice. Because your authentic, truly authentic voice has been hiding for a bit. Now, this energy is quincunxing Mars and Black Moon Lilith, and she happens to be retrograde in Sagittarius in that eighth house. So, this aspect introduces intense emotional, sexual, psychological, it's all that eighth house stuff, tension. The eighth house is also debt, taxes, other people's money. It's the house of divorce as well as absolute commitment, right? It's a very passionate house. Now, this Mars Lilith in Sagittarius in that eighth embodies raw, very defiant truth in the realm of power, intimacy, and anything that's taboo, right? The instinct to expose what's been hidden, even if it disrupts how you're feeling, even if it makes you very uncomfortable. You're going to feel, it's like, I have to have that conversation about our intimate life. I have to have this conversation about money. I have to have this conversation about sharing what it is that we're dealing with. It's going to be very difficult for you to like, but you're going to be very introspective, but you're being pushed to speak your truth, right? Because that retrograde motion internalizes this drive, right? Suppressed rage and passion with truth seeking as an outlet through deep psychological transformation, right? And it's going to be very, very real for you. Now, that quincunx forces an adjustment between that third house need to articulate and rationalize feelings on the one hand, and the eighth house's pull into that emotional, primal, and often unspeakable truth for you. Right? It's a very deep energy. It's very deep, that eighth house. So this can feel like a struggle for you to give actual language to experiences that defy logic or comfort. The mind is trying to translate the underworld in this space, right? And so, what is that underworld? It is like the basement of your psyche, it is everything that's been unhealed in that eighth house. It's very connected to your past, right? So, throwing these all together as an integrated expression, and if you're integrating these things consciously, there could be a very high degree, very powerful emotional intelligence here. The ability to articulate complex feelings and psychological truths with precision and a lot of compassion as well. Could be a lot of healing through dialogue, open communication, bringing up buried stuff, right? Things that have been buried into awareness through communication, right? Communication, the third house, right? The buried stuff is in the eighth house. So having the conversation about things that need addressing, it's going to be really difficult for you to not address it, right? But very transformative insight. Again, merging your rational awareness with intuitive depth, just to achieve profound mental clarity. Because you're going to be in this space where you're just going to want to get to the bottom of things. You're going to want to really understand things a lot better and not just keep things hidden. If you end up resisting it, though, my friends, this can manifest as this kind of mental overwhelm or obsessive thoughts tied to control, to secrecy, or maybe even some old emotional trauma. It could also manifest as fear, right, of expressing some sort of taboo truth, feeling like, you don't want to resist it. You're being made to feel this way on purpose. It could also manifest, only if it's resisted, as a split between intellectual understanding and emotional experience, right? That real divide between what you understand intellectually versus how it is that you feel, right? And that could be such an energy of confliction, right? So you don't want to resist it, right? Because this is a very karmic recalibration of perception and truth telling for you guys right now. This is very, very active. It's very heavy this month because this is the first month that Jupiter went retrograde. To me, I look at this, I think this is a good thing for you guys, right? Because better out than in, right? Because it's really asking you to to really dig out the emotional and the ancestral influences that shape how you think, how you speak, right, with that Cancer in the third, while integrating the raw and transformative power of your hidden emotional truths, which is that Sagittarius in the eighth house. So the goal here is to find a voice that can hold both vulnerability and power, right? And an intellect fused with emotional depth, good, but also authenticity, right? So being very real about things. So I hope you like those extra messages in addition to the November forecast that I put out a couple of weeks back. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your month. Thank you for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Gemini rising, I hope you guys are doing amazing. So for you guys, this configuration puts the karmic focus into the second and the seventh house, second and seventh house, well, house two and house seven, right? They're quincunxing, they're not opposing each other. And what is this is highlighting for you values, self-worth, boundaries, and all kinds of relationship information. This is a deeply revealing transit about how self-value and relational power intertwine. It's really difficult to actually separate them. So with Kronos and Hades and Jupiter all being retrograde in the sign of Cancer, in that second house, there is an emphasis on reevaluating your emotional security, your self-worth, foundations of your own personal value. Now, Cancer ties that worth to nurturing, emotional safety, and even to belonging. So, that retrograde, though, does demand a lot of introspection, a lot of redefining, and just being able to be able to weed out what security really means to you, like foundational security. And this could bring some karmic themes around money, around, I'm sorry, I'm like knocking my computer around. Could bring some karmic themes around about having to do with money, having to do with possessions, your sense of self, self-esteem, any sort of inherited attitudes toward care and dependency. And you will likely confront how early family conditioning shaped your sense of what you deserve or how it is that you provide for yourself as well as others, right? So putting these all into context, let's just sort of address them one at a time. So I want to just explain real quick. Kronos, Hades, and Jupiter, all of them are retrograde. So Kronos retrograde, we can be questioning authority structures around material security, right? It's authority. Kronos is Saturn's dad, right? So he's very connected to this idea of security. So you'll be redefining what true mastery or success means on your own terms. Now, this could also be very connected to what it is that you're doing at work, right? Absolutely, like connected to that Cancer energy, that seventh house. It's very in that second house rather, which is very connected to the money that you make for the work that you do, right? So really looking at that and being very open and honest with yourself. What does it mean to be really good at something? And is it completely necessary for you to be a master at something to do it well, right? And then Hades retrograde, this is about digging out buried fears of scarcity or unworthiness, like that lack mentality, really like staring it down in the face and transforming any sort of inherited emotional patterns that are tied to value or even the idea of dependency, these are going to be looked at. Jupiter is going to make sure that they're being looked at. Now, Jupiter retrograde is turned inward, right? Still good, but turned inward to find some sort of spiritual abundance and moral clarity about what really matters to you. What do you truly value beyond the material or the social validation? Really getting, down and dirty with what actually matters in life, what actually matters to you. And together, these three do signal a profound, like, regrounding of personal worth through emotional maturity, but more than anything, self-trust. Now we have that energy quincunxing the seventh house. So the seventh house, of course, is contracts and relationships. It's also our energetic output that we put out at work, right? It's our boss, it's our bosses, but it's our own personal energetic output at work. Now, This aspect, this quincunx, brings tension between self-worth and partnership dynamics, self-worth and what it is that you put out every day at work, self-worth and how it is that you're feeling in that relationship. Now, Mars and Lilith, they are conjunct, they're very close together. That Lilith energy is retrograde. This ignites a very fierce, independent energy, truth-seeking kind of energy, especially within relationships. You could also be, if you're in a situation with work where you don't feel like you're living very authentically what you're supposed to be doing, you're going to feel so squeezed, right? I'm just letting you know because you're going to have a real need for honesty, for equality, for autonomy. You're not going to want to feel, it's not that you're going to be feeling like a rebel. You're just not going to feel like you have the patience for anyone or anything that's not accepting who it is that you are authentically. Now, that retrograde, these energies turn inward, of course, re-examining how you assert yourself in partnerships or how that desire for freedom may clash with your emotional attachments or any responsibilities that you have connected to that seventh house. And that quincunx does force this adjustment between that second house's need for emotional and material stability and that seventh house's pull towards dynamic connections, because sometimes confrontational relationship experiences, this could certainly form, right? Can end up manifesting through the quincunx. So this can ultimately end up manifesting as a friction between second house clinging to security and demanding authenticity in your relationships in that seventh house. Learning not to base self-worth on how other people treat or validate you. And finding a peace and comfort if somebody is treating you in a way that doesn't feel very good, being able to quickly identify that you're not the problem. I mean, maybe you are. I don't know what goes on in your personal chart, but it's not because of this, right? It's just really the easy ability of being able to kind of rise above it. So as an integrated expression, when done consciously, when integrated consciously, which is why we like to put these videos out, so that when the time comes, those last 2 weeks, you guys are going to be, okay, this is what's going on. But when integrated in a healthy way, healthy self-value, right? Where you recognize that emotional and material security begin within and not through approval, not through what other people could do for you or through partnerships, certainly does serve to also empower relationships. If this is integrated responsibly and consciously, you can engage others as equals, not from dependency and not from defensiveness, right? And this could also manifest as an alignment of values and authenticity. You attract or sustain partnerships in this energy that reflect your evolved inner worth and not your fears. So you may just start to notice that your crew, right, or your people, just people who you're associating with, you have an easier time just sort of not dealing with people who you can easily sense are of a different ilk than you. And you're easily and more closely connecting with people who you can sense value who you are and your inner worth, right? Okay, so we want to make sure that we don't resist these energies, guys, because if this energy is resisted, power struggles, financial entanglements, or self-sabotage in relationships, feeling undervalued, overgiving, being emotionally dependent. And this can also bring this kind of conflicted energy when it comes to safety and freedom, needing control yet craving liberation, and that push, pull, push, pull. So we don't want to resist it, right? This is a transit that is a kind of karmic realignment for you between self-worth and relational power, whether that's to a significant other, whether it's to your boss, whether it's to a best friend, or even if it's just out there to the world when it comes to what it is that you give of yourself every day in work. That second house Cancer cluster is asking you to rebuild emotional and material security from inside out, while that seventh house Mars Lilith challenges you to honor truth and independence in relationship. So the real takeaway for you guys for these last couple of weeks of November is that true intimacy can only flourish when self-worth is no longer negotiable. When love and security are chosen from strength instead of need. Okay, my friends. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Enjoy your November, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. Hey, Cancer. So I like this for you guys because this configuration is going to shift the emphasis, the energy inward to identity, embodiment, self-expression in that first house, while creating tension with work, service, and daily functioning. This is a kind of stress, though, in that sixth house that's completely necessary. It's a transit of profound self-redefinition through inner emotional excavation and the healing of self-worth, work imbalance, being able to recognize where you are out of whack a little bit and being able to more easily recalibrate yourself. Okay. So we have Kronos, we have Hades, we have Jupiter all in your first house. It's a Cancer rising. They're all retrograde. And the focus here is on reconstructing your sense of self from the inside out. Cancer makes identity deeply tied to emotional security and nurturing instincts, right? You guys probably know that about yourselves. But with these planets retrograde, you're undergoing an inner recalibration, truly, when it comes to how it is that you express authority, which is Kronos, process buried emotions, which is Hades, and seek purpose or meaning, which is Jupiter. So, this karmic reorientation of identity, this shedding of outdated emotional armor, right? You guys are really good with the armor, right? You have those big crabby shells on the outside, right? You have that always trying to like protect yourselves, healing from on top of that, healing from ancestral conditioning and redefining what it means to actually feel safe in your own skin. You may become more aware of unconscious habits that shape your self-image or how you present yourself to others. Okay. So let's talk about these. Let's talk about Kronos retrograde, Hades retrograde, and Jupiter retrograde. So Kronos retrograde is questioning how you carry authority, responsibility, as well as self-discipline. Right? It's going to be about aligning outer strength, your outer strength, which is show to the world, with your inner integrity. We have Hades retrograde. It's unearthing suppressed emotional material or shame that has shaped your self-perception and deep self-purification, right? Hades is all about digging it up, bringing it up to the top and trying to kind of sieve through it. And then we have Jupiter retrograde, which is going to be asking you to reevaluate your personal philosophy, your moral compass, turning inward for wisdom rather than external validation. So it's going to be a very, very introspective time. So together, they do describe a rebirth of self through emotional introspection, reclaiming power by embracing emotional authenticity and depth. So we also have this energy's quincunxing to Mars and retrograde Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius in your sixth house of health, of service, responsibility, your daily work environment. But it creates a friction because it's a quincunx. It's 150 degrees away, right? So there's going to be this friction between personal transformation, first house, and daily function, daily responsibilities. Also, circumstances pertaining to your health. There's going to be this friction there. And that Mars, Lilith, and Sag does seek independence. It seeks truth and authenticity when it comes to work routines, routines of responsibility and how it is that you serve others, how it is that you take care of yourself. Now, with the retrograde, it internalizes this drive, prompting reevaluation of how anger, rebellion, and suppressed vitality manifest in your day-to-day life and your daily habits, right? So the quincunx requires adjustments. Quincunxes always do. You can never ignore a quincunx. You could ignore something. Sometimes you could ignore a square, you could let it ride it out. You can't do that to a quincunx, okay? So the first house's need for self-expression and emotional honesty, right? That's one side of it, needs to be adjusted with the sixth house's demand for discipline, order, and practicality. So obviously this can manifest as an inner conflict between how you want to live and how you must function, or between your emotional rhythms and your external obligations here, right? So when consciously balanced, this could certainly embody authenticity, this transit, where you align your identity, right? You align your identity with routines and work that support your emotional well-being, right? It's you're not fighting it. You're saying, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to align what I'm capable of handling, what I could do when it comes to my health, when it comes to my day-to-day responsibilities, right? And really lining that up. Great energy for holistic healing. Self-care becomes a lot more of a sacred service for you in this energy, where you honor your body and your emotions as part of your spiritual integrity, and understanding like stress is not good for your body, right? It's not good. You can't hold on to all of these things. It's really about sort of allowing there to be a balancing out in that area. And also, this is a transit of empowered productivity as well, because you're going to act with purpose, not compulsion, not because you have to, integrating passion and sensitivity into your daily life. Now, this is when it's consciously balanced. You don't want to resist it, because if you resist it, you can easily get burnt out, emotionally exhausted from overwork or people pleasing, right? You want to be careful of the people pleasing situation. Psychosomatic tension can absolutely manifest here, going back to what I said about stress level low, right? Because the mind body connection, because the body is expressing what the psyche is suppressing, right? So you have to be careful there. You could feel, again, this is only if you're resisting these energies. You feel a frustration with responsibilities that feel misaligned with your true self. So, in short, this transit does represent a karmic initiation of self-mastery through emotional integrity and embodied awareness, right? So a lot of emotional intelligence going on here. That Cancer first house cluster calls you inward to feel yourself whole again. No more fragmented, right? You're ready to feel whole again. While that quincunx to Mars Lilith in Sagittarius in that sixth house is going to test how well that inner truth translates into daily life and service. So, at the end of the day, this is about integrating emotional authenticity into the structure of your days, so that who you are and how you live finally speak the same language. So, I hope that was helpful, Cancer. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Take care. Hi, Leo. So for you guys, this configuration takes the emotional and karmic work into one of the more profound placements, that 12th house energy, the realm of the unconscious, spirit, and endings. And here, this conjunction in Cancer merges with deep emotional memory, spiritual lineage, while that quincunx to Mars, Black Moon Lilith retrograde in that fifth house challenges how you express your creative and your instinctual self. So this is a transit of spiritual purification, creative reawakening, and integration of shadowed emotion into authentic expression. Very good for creativity. So, but let's get into it a little deeper. So, with this Kronos, Hades, and Jupiter all retrograde in Cancer in the 12th house, you're called into the inner sanctum of the psyche, where ancestral memory, karmic residue hangs out, emotional imprints reside. So, Cancer here in this space connects the soul's history with emotion. So, this is where we're coming across our inherited grief, our feelings of compassion, guilt, empathy. And the retrograde motion intensifies the introspection here. It's a time of quiet reconstruction of spiritual and emotional foundations for you guys. So you may feel pulled inward toward isolation or reflection, or some sort of deep need for emotional release, especially as old spiritual contracts or unconscious patterns really begin to dissolve and fade away. So, such a great time period for meditation, doing yoga, anything that allows you that space, prayer, anything that allows you that space to just sort of be within yourself. Now, the Kronos retrograde is going to be all about reassessing your inner authority. learning to hold spiritual or emotional boundaries, even in invisible realms, right? Really looking at where have you allowed yourself to be victimized, where have you allowed yourself to have your boundaries violated, where have you violated other people's boundaries, right? And getting very honest with that. Now we also have Hades retrograde, which is bringing buried pain, shame, and ancestral trauma into conscious healing, confronting what's been hidden in the depths of your psyche. So it might not be comfortable, but man, oh man, is this productive? It really is. And with that Jupiter retrograde, turning inward for faith, finding meaning not in external systems, but in your inner emotional truth, as well as your compassion. So together, these signal a karmic purification of the emotional and spiritual body. And it really does align you with a much more, it's subtle, but a much more wise, kind of self-mastery and understanding. Now, this quincunx to Mars and that Black Moon Lilith, which is retrograde in the sign of Sag, in the fifth house, this introduces creative and expressive tension between the hidden, the 12th house energy, introspective 12th house, and that fiery and performative fifth house. Now, that fifth house energy, by the way, guys, is also very connected to entrepreneurial efforts. It's connected to your children. It's connected to your joy and happiness. And so there's going to be this tension between that 12th house and fifth house. With this Mars, Lilith, and Sag, quincunx, this is representing a very raw, untamed drive for self-expression, for truth, for creative freedom, for wanting. So fifth house is also falling in love, love affairs, and romance. So really being very focused on what it is that you're looking for in relationship, being very focused on something and even protective of something pertaining to the idea of children. Yet this retrograde, it's turned inward. So you're going to be re-examining how you express passion, how you express individuality, and really looking at your desire for recognition. Really looking at that front and center, because this quincunx creates this push and pull, right? That 12th house pull toward withdrawal, solitude, and transcendence, and that house's urge to create, to shine, to express this primal vitality. Some of you may even have a very strong desire to conceive, a very strong desire for a relationship, a very strong desire to open a business, right? But it's like this push-pull. Really, guys, go with it. Don't resist it, right? This is just another necessary step in what it is that you're going through. Because it's as though the inner mystic, 12th house, right? And that inner artist, inner creative, whatever you're creating, fill in the blank in that fifth house, must learn to coexist. So creative energy may feel blocked. Literal energy to conceive may be blocked. You may feel like it's one block after another if you want to start your own business, or overly charged, like really amped up until unconscious emotional material is integrated, right? There's got to be this real thinking things out. This idea of integration is so important for you guys these last couple of weeks, especially in November. So an integrated expression, when consciously integrated, can manifest as creative healing. Artistic or expressive acts become a vehicle for emotional and spiritual release, sacred self-expression, where you're able to channel hidden wisdom, ancestral emotion into an authentic, creative voice. So good for creativity. But it's also beautiful for quiet empowerment, because strength grows through vulnerability and compassion, not through performance and control, right? So we really want to lean into the illuminated energy there, right? Of that fifth house energy, which is so important to you guys, right? It's home. So you don't want to resist it, because that can give you feelings of invisibility, suppressed passion, or guilt, even about expressing yourself. It could absolutely manifest as creative stagnation or self-sabotage, just completely driven through unconscious fears or by unconscious fears. It could also manifest as escapism and emotional overwhelm, or even projection or inner turmoil into romantic or even creative drama. So this transit does mark a karmic turning point in integrating shadowed emotion with conscious creativity for you guys, because that Cancer 12th house cluster energy dissolves the old spiritual and emotional patterns, while that quincunx to Mars and that retrograde Lilith in the fifth, that's going to be testing your ability to express yourself freely and truthfully after the purge. So learn to let creation and joy flow from emotional authenticity and not from old wounds or and not from this need for validation, right? This is about transforming hidden pain into sacred and very, very creative energy. So that is what I have for you guys. I hope this was helpful in some way. See you guys next time. Bye bye. Hi, Virgo. Hope you guys are doing great. So, for you guys, we have Kronos, Hades, Jupiter. Well, we all have this, all retrograde in the sign of Cancer, and it's in your 11th house. So, the focus is on redefining your role within that 11th house energy. So, groups, friendships, when it comes to your goals and gains in your future, your collective idea, well, the collective ideals. It's the house really of like the masses, but it's also a house that addresses, especially with that Cancer energy there, because 11th house is also daughter-in-law, son-in-law, stepchildren, grandchildren. It's connected to older siblings, in general goals and gains, and groups that you're involved with as well as work, right? So we have this Cancer, that Cancer energy in there, and it ties into that 11th house to a very deep, like emotional kinship, this longing for communities that feel like family, right? There's a strong desire for this, but the retrograde trio here demands deep introspection, and you have to step back and ask, are these bonds nourishing or depleting you? Are you leading or are you caretaking out of love, guilt, or habit, right, in your life? Really, kind of in general, especially because it's working. It's in the sign of Cancer, but that naturally opposes the fifth house. So when it comes to your relationships, your children, are you leading or caretaking out of that love, guilt, or habit? And this transit does signal a karmic reevaluation of belonging, of leadership, as well as shared vision, asking you to align community participation and just thinking about other people with emotional integrity. So let's just kind of break down Kronos and Hades and Jupiter retrograde. So Kronos retrograde reassesses authority and boundaries in groups, like how you wield responsibility or influence among peers or among people who you're close to in your life. And then we have Hades retrograde. So Hades retrograde is about exposing shadow dynamics in the 11th house when it comes to friendships or the collective. Maybe even when it comes to your goals and gains, unspoken resentments, power struggles, emotional debts, can certainly show up here. Now, with Jupiter retrograde, this is about re-examining ideals and moral philosophies, about community, about equality, about collective purpose. This is all about growth through introspection in rather than expansion. So together, these energies really do foster an emotional and an ethical maturity, right, in your social identity and how it is that you're viewing your future and how it is that you're viewing your goals and gains, and you're learning what genuinely belonging to a group means, right, when stripped of obligation or illusion. Right? Because a lot of times you're connected to these groups because it's like they need you to do things for them. You're always doing things for them, right? And this is not about you not helping anymore, but it's just being able to identify your role in the life of the people who, your people, right? Um, is it because you do things for them, or is it because they, their connection to you is authentic, right? Something you're going to be thinking about. Now, we also have this quincunx to Mars and the retrograde Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius in your fourth house. And here, this energy always symbolizes raw, instinctual, emotional truth, right? The primal self that refuses to conform, especially in that fourth house. So in Sagittarius, it fights for authenticity and liberation from here inherited emotional conditioning, right? Like this idea of I have to do it because they're my family, or I have to do it because of, have to fill in the blank, right? And this retrograde becomes internalized, revisiting how family history, cultural roots, your inner security issues influence your social behavior and your relationships. Now, this quincunx creates tension between the 11th house's urge to connect, idealize, and nurture the collective, and the fourth house's demand for personal truth, privacy, emotional independence. So this could manifest as feeling torn between loyalty to your tribe and loyalty to your inner truth. And you may end up withdrawing from groups that just no longer resonate with your deeper emotional integrity, or you feel compelled to confront patterns or emotional caretaking that mirror family dynamics. So when integrated consciously, this could be a good thing, right? Manifesting as authentic community engagement where you build relationships rooted in emotional honesty and not duty and not projection, just real healthy stuff. This could certainly heal ancestral patterns through connection, transforming inherited emotional roles like that caretaker or outsider into sources of strength and leadership. And it could also bring emotionally intelligent visions to you, where you're able to more easily balance empathy with healthy boundaries, leading or contributing from emotional maturity and not from these like places of guilt because you have to. Now, if you resist it, there will end up being emotional fatigue, alienation from groups, repetition of family power dynamics and friendships, or any kind of collaboration that you might be involved in. There could be this inner conflict between craving belonging and fearing emotional exposure. So this transit does represent a karmic reconciliation between emotional roots, which is fourth house, and family roots as well, and social expression, right? And your goals and gains and where it is that you're going in life, right? So the Cancer 11th house cluster invites emotional growth through community and collective purpose, while that Mars Lilith, retrograde Lilith quincunx, expresses unresolved family conditioning that colors how it is that you connect with others. So true belonging arises when you no longer abandon your inner emotional truth to maintain outer harmony. And when community becomes an extension of authenticity and not a substitute for it, right? Being able to see the difference between those two. All right, my friends. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Hey Libra, so these energies, okay, we'll break them out, but the configuration in general moves this karmic focus into your 10th house of vocation, reputation, life direction, and it even covers mother energy, bringing that Cancerian emotional depth into the realm of public identity, authority, and how these things should look as you're stepping into your future, your new future, I might just say, right? Now that quincunx to Mars and Black Moon Lilith, which is retrograde in Sagittarius in your third house, this introduces a kind of tension between how it is that you express your truth and how you carry yourself in the world. And this is a transit of emotional integrity in leadership, communication, and self-definition. You're getting ready to stand up for yourself, Libra, in a very different way. Libra rising, especially Libra rising, okay? Now with Kronos, Hades, and Jupiter, all retrograde in Cancer in the 10th house, this is a time of intense inner review of your purpose, authority, your public role, as well as your connection to mother energy. Now, Cancer in the 10th weaves emotion, it weaves care and sensitivity into your professional life, into your long-term plans. It weaves it like how it is that you're seen by the world as well. But with these planets retrograde, you're redefining what success and authority mean on a soul level for you. So it's not about external approval anymore. It's just not. It's about aligning your public expression, right? How it is when you're forward facing out to the world with deep emotional truth and moral authenticity. Old patterns around control, around duty, or emotional caretaking, whether it's in a career or having to do with mother energy, all of these things are likely going to surface to be transformed. So when we're talking about these three in Cancer, we have Kronos, we have Hades, and we have Jupiter. They're all retrograde. What does that mean? Kronos retrograde is for you, it's manifesting as a reevaluation of how you hold authority in your life. So again, it's shifting from external control to internal mastery, and your own integrity. Hades retrograde is exposing buried power dynamics or emotional weight tied to this need for ambition and reputation and family expectations and all this stuff. And it's just coming up to the top because Jupiter retrograde has you turned very inward to redefine your philosophy of success and leadership, measuring growth by emotional authenticity and not that outer achievement. So when we throw it all together, these energies call for emotional and ethical restructuring in your professional and public life. And when you're thinking about your path as you move forward, you are learning to lead from compassion rather than obligation. This is also, again, 10th house, very connected to mother energy. Now, talking about this quincunx, right? It's 5 houses away, 150 degrees to Mars and Black Moon Lilith. Lilith is retrograde in Sagittarius in your 3rd house. This brings friction between emotional authority, 10th house, and raw instinctive communication, 3rd house, right? So that Mars Lilith in this space, this is all about fierce, independent thought, right? Such a drive to speak truth, question systems, express unfiltered perspectives. You are not playing anymore, Libra. And the retrograde brings a lot of introspection. So you're really reconsidering how your truth is voiced, how anger or conviction are communicated, and whether your words empower or alienate. What do? Do they empower or do they alienate? And the quincunx demands adjustment between these two spaces. So the 10th house demands, a lot of composure, responsibility, emotional maturity in the public eye, right? But we have to sort of adjust it with that 3rd house's urge for honesty and freedom of speech and spontaneous expression, right? And really being able to decipher between all of this. This tension can feel like walking a tightrope between emotional diplomacy and blunt authenticity. And you may feel torn between saying what you truly believe and maintaining your reputation or your professional role, right? Now, some of you may be doing the same navigating with like a mother or mother-in-law energy, where it's like, really want to say this thing, but you're like, okay, what's the value add here? Let me keep my eye, on the end goal, right? Like trying to like balance it out, right? So we want to think about integrating these energies consciously, because if you do, you will experience authentic leadership where you express authority with emotional intelligence, where you're firm yet compassionate in your communication, integrity in speech and how you're presenting yourself, your words, your public persona, it all aligns. You become a voice of truth rooted in empathy. Very transformative influence, right? If you use this correctly, right? Where you use communication as a tool for healing and education or advocacy without sacrificing professionalism. Or if you have to have that tough mother conversation, it's being able to exercise healthy boundaries in a way where you're showing empathy, but you're also showing self-respect. Because when resisted, that inner conflict between honesty and image management can be really blown up. It can become very uncomfortable. You could feel repressed frustration leading to passive aggressive communication or even burnout. And it could lead to struggles with authority figures or public misunderstandings of your intentions. So this transit is a karmic recalibration of how you express your truth and authority. That Cancer 10th house cluster invites you to embody emotional intelligence in that public role, pertaining to your long-term plans, career, having to do with mother energy, while that Mars Lilith quincunx from the 3rd pushes for unfiltered, liberating communication. So you just have to keep in mind that true authority rises when your voice and your values are one. They're the same thing. So when your public presence reflects the depth of your emotional and moral truth and not a performance of it, that's where you win. Okay, my friends. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey, Scorpio. So for you guys, Kronos retrograde, Hades retrograde, Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, it's in your 9th house, quincunxing Mars and retrograde Black Moon Lilith in the sign of Sagittarius in your 2nd house. So this transit stirs up some deep questions about what you believe in and what you're worth. With Cronus, Hades, and Jupiter retrograde in that Cancer ninth house energy, old belief systems, philosophies, or moral codes are all being re-examined. Now, you may be questioning long-held truths that once felt very secure to you. Cancer makes us very emotional. So your worldview is very tied to your roots, to your family values, or for many of you, your cultural conditioning. And now you're realizing how much of that still shapes you. And during this transit, you may feel pulled between your deeper beliefs and your sense of personal worth. You're rethinking what it is that you truly believe in, your philosophies, your moral compass, and even how you interpret meaning or purpose right now. So again, these long-held ideologies, these long-held beliefs, traditions, or even inherited values might not fit within you as neatly as they used to, you know? Or, and you can certainly feel called to look beneath the surface of what you've been told to believe, or even what you have been telling yourself. Now, meanwhile, that Mars and Lilith, they're conjunct, that Lilith is retrograde in Sag in the second house, push for self-definition and independence around value, both material and personal. So there's a fiery urge to stand your ground and claim what's yours, even if it challenges others' beliefs or expectations. And the quincunx between these placements, again, it creates this inner friction that has to be solved because your evolving philosophy might clash with your sense of self-worth or even your financial security, or even both, right? It's that, saying to yourself, I know I've outgrown this, but it's still uncomfortable, too uncomfortable for me to let go of it kind of energy, whether it has to do with, a financial situation, a home situation, a relationship situation, whatever it is, you may feel torn between emotional loyalty to the past and a need to assert a more liberated, self-defined sense of value for yourself, really focusing on what really matters. And these energies can feel like a real tug of war between your inner truth and what makes you feel secure. So, you may question whether your beliefs still support your sense of value or whether holding on to certain attachments is actually keeping you a little too small in your life, Scorpio. So this is a recalibration phase. You're aligning your personal truth with what truly feels meaningful, learning to trust your instincts, even when they defy tradition or even authority. Because the growth comes through honesty with yourself about what beliefs and attachments you've outgrown that just simply don't work for you anymore. Scorpio, okay? So those are some extra messages that I have for you. I hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Sagittarius rising. So for you guys, we have the Kronos, the Hades, and the Jupiter all retrograde in Cancer in your eighth house. And it is quincunxing the Mars and Black Moon Lilith retrograde in your sign. So it would be in your first house. And this is especially going to be relevant for those of you who are Sagittarius rising. Now, this particular transit brings deep transformation around control, power, and personal authenticity. So with Kronos, Hades, and Jupiter all retrograde in Cancer in your eighth, old emotional attachments, power dynamics, or even shared resources are all under review. Anything that's in the eighth house. So past relationships, past divorces, past debt, things that have been building up around shared, any sort of shared resources, anything like that. You might be revisiting buried feelings around any of these things, around trust, around intimacy, around dependency, realizing where emotional and energetic exchanges have felt one-sided or draining, right? Whether you were given too much, they were given too much, whatever it was, right? That imbalance is going to be looked at. And Cancer's influence makes this deeply personal, stirring up themes of emotional safety and vulnerability. Don't fall down that rabbit hole, though, all right? You want to really kind of lean into these energies. Now, meanwhile, We have Mars conjunct Black Moon Lilith. She's retrograde in your sign in the first house. And this is firing up your independence and raw self-expression. You're ready to assert who you are without apology, even if it challenges others' expectations or disrupts old roles that you've played. There's a rebellious edge here for sure, Sag. I mean, there is somebody or maybe a couple of people in your life where you are like laying the law down, you are blocking them, you are putting up the boundaries, whatever it is. There is a refusal to stay small or to play by the rules that no longer feel good to you or fit your truth. Now, I do want to say that however this is manifesting for you, the person receiving that, it's only because they have not been treating you well in one way or another. Okay. This is not about you being difficult. This is about you honestly standing up for yourself. Now, the quincunx between these placements creates a push-pull between your inner transformation and your outer identity. Part of you wants to break free and redefine yourself, while another part of you is still trying to figure it out. You're still trying to navigate emotional ties or unspoken obligations that hold some kind of power over you. You're going to be navigating those energies for a bit. This is a very potent time to reclaim your power from the inside out, Sagittarius. You're learning that true strength doesn't come from control. It comes from self-awareness and emotional honesty. And as you shed old fears and you step into your truth, your confidence and your magnetism are just going to absolutely grow very organically and very naturally. Okay, guys, so I hope these extra messages for the last 2 weeks of November were helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Capricorn rising, I hope you guys are doing really well. Let's talk about this transit. So we have Kronos, Hades, Jupiter. They're all retrograde in the sign of Cancer in your seventh house of relationships, contracts, your energetic output at work. It's quincunxing, so it's 5 houses away. It's 150 degrees away. Mars and retrograde Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius in your 12th house. So what does this mean? This transit highlights the balance between relationships and your inner world, right? And with Kronos, Hades, and Jupiter all retrograde in that seventh house Cancer energy, this could be romantic, it could be professional or otherwise. It's just anybody that you have some sort of like soul contract with. It could be a best friend, it could be a sibling you're really close with. These are all going through a very deep review. And I feel like a lot of you have probably been feeling it already. So this is not that much of a shock, but it's really going to elevate to a different level by the end of November. Now, you may be rethinking what equality and commitment and emotional safety really mean to you. Old patterns of control, emotional caretaking, or dependency could resurface so that you can clearly really re-examine, look at, and decide what's still working for you. You know, where do some adjustments need to be made, right, in those areas? Now, Cancer here makes things very tender, very personal. You're not just dealing with surface level dynamics, but Capricorn rising, the emotional history behind them. And that's the important part. The emotional history. Facts really don't matter whenever Cancer is in the house, right? I always say, it's not that Cancer can't understand facts. Cancer just doesn't want to, right? So this is what I'm talking about, the emotional history. How are you still feeling about the situation in that having to do with that relationship, that situation with your boss, that situation that happened at work with your energetic output, the thing that happened with that friend, whatever. There's a sense of wanting connection, guys. Yet you're going to feel this very strong need to protect your own sensitivity, right? So very interesting. And you're not going to be able to ignore it. Okay. So that's going on over here. Meanwhile, 5 houses away, 150 degrees away, Mars is conjunct Black Moon Lilith. She's retrograde in Sag in 12th house, the house of the hidden. And this is going to be stirring up some very strong subconscious drives. You might feel restless or conflicted without fully knowing why. You might have trouble sleeping. You might be waking up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And but with absolute clarity about what you don't even know, but you feel very clear about like one certain thing suddenly is hitting you, right? And this is what happens when we have these kind of energies in the house of sleep, right? But it's as if though this hidden part of you wants to break free from roles that you've quietly outgrown. So, and only you know this. So you really want to kind of sit quietly with yourself and ask yourself, like, what do you feel like you've outgrown in your life, but you're really not talking about it with anything, with anybody? This can bring up very powerful dreams, intuitive flashes, or the urge to just withdraw and recharge your spirit because you're going to have this very strong desire to redesign how it is that you connect to people. Now, this quincunx between these areas shows tension between what's happening in your private inner landscape and how you show up for others. So you may feel this need to retreat or set boundaries just so that you can avoid losing yourself in somebody else's drama or emotional world, right? And this is a time for very quiet empowerment, right? Recognizing where your energy leaks in relationships and reclaiming your emotional authority as you reconnect with your inner fire, as you will be, especially as we go into December, you'll find it easier to relate to others from a place of self-trust, which you are currently really leveling up, right? Rather than obligation or fear. So really going into this space where you are really learning how to trust yourself, trust your intuition. Not that you weren't able to do it before, but it was more cognitive rather than visceral before. Like right now, you're believing it in your belly. I can trust myself. I actually can trust myself. I'm I am a good person, or I'm good at this, or I know I'm being fair. I feel very, and not in a prideful kind of way, just like a peaceful kind of way, right? Um, but there's going to be a lot of unpacking and a lot of like inner versus outer, right? I mean, it's that 12th house is just so deeply personal. So, yeah, so don't be surprised if your sleep is a little weird the last couple of weeks of the month. That's just on brand for this. All right, my friends. So I hope that was helpful. Enjoy the rest of November, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye. Hey Aquarius, I hope you guys are doing great. So, we have Kronos, Hades, and Jupiter all retrograde, all in Cancer, and it's in your sixth house. And it's quincunxing, which means 5 houses away, 150 degrees to Mars. Mars is conjunct Black Moon Lilith. She's retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius in your 11th house. So, that's a lot. That's a mouthful. Let's talk about what it actually means. Now, this transit highlights this tension between your daily responsibilities and your larger goals or gains in social life, right? That's that 11th house. Your goals, your gains, your friends, the masses. What else is the 11th house? Rules technology, rules the future, it rules older siblings, stepchildren, grandchildren, daughter-in-law, son-in-law. So in that space, Kronos, Hades, Jupiter, retrograde, all in that sixth house. So it's 5 houses away uh, from there. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm looking at your chart right now. So Chronos, Hades, and Jupiter retrograde in your sixth, and Mars and Lilith in Sag are in that 11th house. So with all of those energies retrograding Cancer in the sixth house, you're being called to reassess how you manage your work, your daily responsibilities, your health, because that's the house. Sixth house is the health of mental, physical, and emotional health and maintenance, body maintenance. Also routines are in that sixth house. So there may be emotional weight that you realize behind your habits. And what I mean by that is like a sense of duty or service or caretaking that's become tied to proving your worth or maintaining some kind of control, right? It's like this have to stuff. Now, retrogrades here really do invite you to slow down and notice where you're overextending yourself and create a healthier rhythm rooted in genuine care rather than obligation, to really look at your day-to-day responsibilities. And I'm not saying not to help people out, but where are you, getting it to a point where you're you're hurting yourself by overextending yourself, right? That overwhelming sense of obligation, or you're going to feel guilty about it, right? So you have that going on. And meanwhile, we have that Mars conjunct Lilith retrograde in Sag in that 11th house, which is energizing your desire to express individuality within groups, express your individuality when it comes to your future, your goals and gains. And you might feel frustrated, and then that could be with team dynamics, with group dynamic, kind of group dynamics. You even social expectations can be found here. You might be a little frustrated with that, or causes that no longer align with your truth. So there's a rebellious spark that wants to redefine how you participate in life, how you participate within your community, within your friend group, within the group of people maybe that you work with, more on your own terms. Now, that quincunx between these placements creates friction between practicality and idealism, right? So you may feel torn between tending to everyday demands and wanting to pursue something more visionary, more liberating for you, right? It's this push pull to integrate both, grounding your ideals in consistent action while freeing yourself from this guilt-driven service that is likely going on. So this is a great time to restructure your workflow, restructure your health routines. What does it mean? What does wellness actually mean to you? And restructuring that just so that you have more support when it comes to your evolving goals, because you're in this space where you're absolutely evolving your goals and gains. You are restructuring things, right? You're absolutely. So the balance comes when you stop over caring for systems that don't feed your growth and you start investing energy, Aquarius, in communities and people and projects that truly reflect who you are. And you stop wasting your time with, whether it's with friends or groups or any sort of employment situation, that you know damn well at the end of the day, you feel like you're trying to fit a circle in a square, my friend. So that is what I have for you. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Enjoy the rest of November. See you next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Pisces. I hope you guys are doing great. Pisces risings in particular, to a lesser degree, Sun or Moon. So let's look at Kronos, Hades, Jupiter, all retrograde in Cancer in your 5th house. And it's quincunxing Mars and Black Moon Lilith retrograde in Sagittarius in your 10th house. So let's talk about what that means. It's a mouthful, so let's just unpack it and put it together and unpack it. This transit is going to stir up questions about within you, having to do with self-expression, creativity, and how your personal joy connects to your public image or your career path, right? So let's just kind of understand this. 5th house is your joy, falling in love, love affairs, romance, entrepreneurial efforts, monetizable talents, children, um, anything that you create, anything that brings you joy. And that 10th house has to do with your long-term goals, your career, your public reputation, your standing in the world, as well as mother energy, right? So you're in this space because these are very heavy retrogrades here, really revisiting what truly inspires you, right? Old creative dreams, passions, or romantic stories can easily resurface for reflection, not necessarily to relive them, but to understand what they taught you about emotional fulfillment and about self-worth. Cancer's influence here adds heart, it adds nostalgia, and it really does ask you if you still find joy in the same things as you used to, or has your idea of love and expression evolved beyond what it used to be? So this is going on over here. I'm 5 houses away at the same time. We have that Mars conjunct retrograde Lilith and Sagittarius in that 10th, which pushes you to assert your independence in your career or your public role. You may feel a very strong urge to break away from external expectations or reclaim authority over your professional direction. Lilith here wants authenticity, to be seen for who you truly are and not who you're supposed to be. right? And the quincunx between these houses does bring tension between your inner creative spark and the outer world's pressure, right? That you're feeling from everything external to you. So you might struggle with feeling that your true self doesn't quite fit the mold of your public image, or that pursuing joy could disrupt your professional standing, where it's like, do I go after what I really want, but then am I not going to make enough money? I don't know, right? And then it's like, oh, people see me as this, but that's not even really me. Okay, so this transit is a chance to realign passion with purpose, authenticity with purpose. So let your creative side inform your career choices. Now, we might not even be talking about creative. What does creative mean? It's not only about art and writing and singing and acting. Creative is anything that you're doing that with your own unique personal approach. Do you know what I mean? It could certainly be that. We could also very much connect this to children as well, you know, really reevaluating and reassessing connection with children, you know, but allowing this side of you, the sensitive side of you, to inform where your life is going, right? And allow that public identity, what people see, to reflect more of your genuine self. The more you honor your emotional truth here, the stronger and more magnetic your professional presence becomes. There's no question about it. So, really nice there, very nice balancing out, really pulling you into a very authentic space, Pisces. So I like this a lot for you. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.